Hi and welcome everyone after a short hiatus to Case Discussions Reviews with Dr. Aditya. So today we have with us a case that you find quite often in your wards or in your OPDs. It may not be a patient who you might find in your ward that often for this indication. The patient might be admitted in your ward for some other reason, for some other morbidity, but she has concomitantly this disorder or this aspect of a history that is Rh negative pregnancy. So your cases mostly might be something like preeclampsia along with Rh negative pregnancy or diabetes mellitus with Rh negative pregnancy rather than being a purely Rh negative case. The other way in which this can present to you in your exams can be as a postnatal case, wherein there's a female who was delivered maybe by vaginal delivery or cesarean section, but your female who has delivered has Rh negative pregnancy, and it may present to you in that way. That said, there's quite a bit of discussion that is there for Rh negative pregnancy and is quite a significant topic, one of the more important topics in obstetrics. So, without further ado, let us begin. So, first of all, the question that arises and or that should arise is why is this that significant a topic? So, what is the reason that this topic carries as much of significance? So, first of all, it falls under a broad group of disorders that we call as fetal anemia. So, fetal anemia में ये एक disorder आता है. And excuse me for a second, I'm just getting the settings configured. Yeah. So it presents in the form of Rh negative pregnancy, is a form of fetal anemia disorders, and there are several other disorders that come under fetal anemia. So which are they? So first of all, when I talk of Rh negative pregnancy, I should be talking about fetal anemia. I'm also going to be giving a brief introduction to what fetal anemia is and what it does. I'll be talking about fetal anemia over the course of lecture multiple times. So fetal anemia, there can be several reasons, there can be several etiologies to it. The first one is the one that we shall be studying today, and that is alloimmunization. What is alloimmunization? It is basically wherein you're getting or wherein you're mounting an immune response to something or some antigen that comes from the human race itself, but not from the same body. Because if it would have been from the same body, my own body, it would have been autoimmunity. But since it is coming from some other body, it is going to be called as alloimmunization. So in this alloimmunization, we have multiple other aspects, and those aspects include Rh negative pregnancy that we are going to be talking about today, or ABO incompatibility. These are just two of the several more that are there. Kel alloimmunization, Kel's का आता है, बहुत सारे आते हैं इसमें. Kid antigen आता है, Duffy antigen आता है, Bombay group आता है. There are many, but these are the two more significant and the more common ones, which is why I'm just putting them over here. The next one is going to be fetal anemia that is caused by infections. Intrauterine infections. Remember, I'm not talking about maternal infections. So when I talk of intrauterine infections, there are two important ones. The first one is a celebrity, the one that everyone knows about, that is Storch, and the second one is parvovirus. How it causes fetal anemia, everything I'm going to be discussing after this. The third one is due to some genetic disorder that the female or the baby might have. And those genetic disorders include things like G6PD deficiency. You may ask me as to how can G6PD deficiency lead to fetal anemia? I mean, it is inside the uterus. The baby is still inside the womb. How can it lead to fetal anemia? So the answer behind that, very simple, very important here over the part is the part over here that is important is that whenever there are how does G6PD cause hemolysis? It causes hemolysis whenever there is an increase in the oxidative stress. Now, one factor that can increase the oxidative stress can be a drug. There are several drugs, one of the examples being nitrofurantoin. There can be several such drugs that can lead to G6PD deficiency leading to anemia. So basically G6PD, the baby might already be deficient with that enzyme. But whenever the mother is receiving one of those drugs that can cause an oxidative stress and it crosses the placenta as well and goes to the baby, that can trigger that hemolysis event, which is why genetic disorders very important. Next, I have pyruvate kinase deficiency, very similar to G6PD. Then we have several of those thalassemia major syndromes. It can be alpha major, alpha thal major, beta thal major. So thalassemia major, remember I'm not mentioning trait, I'm just mentioning it to be major. Then I have glucose storage disorders, Gaucher's disease and several more. And then we have diamond black fan anemia. For the ones who might be thinking, what is this? In your NEET preparation phase, you would hear this, especially in pathology. The last cause of fetal anemia is going to be due to feto-maternal hemorrhage. Basically, the baby has lost on its own blood into the mother, and that has led to feto-maternal hemorrhage. Not a significant cause of fetal anemia, but a significant reason because of which Rh negative or Rh isoimmunization can happen in Rh negative female. So these are the four major causes. Now you would ask me as to how and why does fetal anemia matter, and why is it that important? So first of all, whenever there is fetal anemia, now you know that in a fetus, the major hematopoietic organs wherein hematopoiesis occurs, wherein the RBC production occurs, is not bone marrow. Bone marrow is one of them, but not the major one like in adults. In fetuses, it is your liver and your spleen. So whenever there is fetal anemia due to any of these reasons, there is going to be hepatic dysfunction. So what happens is basically your extra medullary hematopoiesis is what goes on in the fetus. So in your fetus, the major RBC producing organs include your bone marrow, of course, it is one of them, but the other two very important include your liver and your spleen. So whenever there is fetal anemia, there is breakdown of RBCs. At that point of time, there is breakdown or there is non-production of erythrocytes. Then all these start over-functioning. They have to over-function. So how do they overfunction? Bone marrow, first of all, what it will do, it is a place where RBCs are formed as well as where they mature. But now the fact that mature RBCs are being broken down, they are being lysed quite rapidly in the peripheral circulation. So this bone marrow is encouraged, or it is basically forced, not encouraged, it is forced to release immature forms so that it can compensate. So this leads to the release of precursors of erythrocytes. The name of those precursors being erythroblasts. We all know that blasts are basically immature forms of any cells. So this is called as erythroblasts being released in the peripheral circulation, which we also call as erythroblastosis. Osis यानी बहुत ज़्यादा production. So erythroblastosis. So there is an increased production of erythroblasts and increased presence of erythroblasts in your peripheral circulation. This is called as erythroblastosis. Erythroblastosis, when it happens in the fetus, we also call it erythroblastosis fetalis, which is also the other name for Rh iso-immunized babies having this full-blown disease. More on it later to come. What with the liver and spleen? With the liver and spleen, there is hepatosplenomegaly. Now this hepatosplenomegaly, especially the hepatic component, now remember spleen का तो at least काम है सिर्फ यही सब cells का देखने का, hematopoietic cells का. Immunity yes, but the major work is to look after these cells. But the liver has several more functions. It has synthesis function, it produces proteins. In an adult, it produces albumin. In a fetus, it produces alpha fetoprotein. It has the it has the work of metabolism of every single body's metabolite. It also has the function of excretion of bilirubin and other waste materials. So इसमें से the three major functions, synthesis, metabolism and excretion, इसमें से जो metabolism का था वो metabolism के लिए when the fetus is still inside the mother, the baby will still have the placenta to metabolize and to excrete the bad products. So the placenta will compensate for the lack of it. But जो उसका synthesis का function है वो कोई और नहीं कर सकता. The placenta can't compensate for that. So the synthesis of several things, especially the proteins, reduces. So alpha fetoprotein, which is the equivalent of albumin in a fetus, the production is going to be reduced. This will reduce the oncotic pressure of the fetus. The reduction in the oncotic pressure is going to be very detrimental. Now, what is also happening is, यहाँ पे erythroblastosis, excessive number of RBCs are being released, but these RBCs are immature. So what is happening is the fetal body, the fetal blood is having very few number of RBCs. So for that, even the heart says that I will help you a bit by over functioning. So there is a over functioning or hyperdynamic state of circulation that is achieved by the heart by increasing the cardiac output. It says कि body में RBCs come है, no problem. I will pump double the amount of blood so that I can compensate for the lack of RBCs or for the lack of RBCs in the entire fetal circulation. So the cardiac output increases, but beyond a point, the heart is a very tiny organ for the fetus. This will lead to high output cardiac failure. Now, high output cardiac failure is also going to lead to increase in the hydrostatic pressure. बैक प्रेशर चेंजेस आएंगे, जैसे एडल्ट्स में कंजेस्टिव हार्ट फेलियर आता है वैसे ही फीटस में भी होगा, उससे हाइड्रोस्टैटिक चेंजेस होंगे, हाइड्रोस्टैटिक pressure will increase. Now, these two factors, that increase in hydrostatic pressure and reduction in the oncotic pressure, will lead to increased third space fluid loss. And when third space fluid loss, which is that third space, it can be the peritoneal cavity, it can be the pericardial cavity, it can be the pleural cavity. And if it is too excessive, then even your subcutaneous region, that can also be a region where all this fluid accumulates. This will lead to accumulation of fluid in the form of ascites or pericardial effusion or pleural effusion or even subcutaneous edema. एनासार का जो एडल्ट में होता है वैसे ही सेम एवरीथिंग लाइक द एडल्ट. दिस व्हेन इट हैपेंस इन द fetus is called as hydrops fetalis. So hydrops fetalis is basically, hydro is water, there is fetus which is completely filled with water all over it. This is what fetal anemia can do in its worst form, which is why you definitely need to know if there is hydrops fetalis, then the heart has already failed. Even if you deliver the baby, the fetal heart is over functioning, it is probably already failing. The fetus or the newborn is not going to have a great outcome. So the entire scenario of management of fetal anemia, be it because of Rh negative or be it because of torch infections or G6PD, everything, एक ही उसका मकसद है. I have to prevent hydrops fetalis. Preventing fetal death is not the final outcome. That is like the worst possible thing that can happen, fetal death. So if you have prevented fetal death, but the baby already has hydrops fetalis, so even after delivery, the baby will find it very difficult to survive. Which is why my final outcome should never be just prevention of fetal demise, but also to prevent hydrops fetalis. And everything that we shall be learning today will have only that one goal, that I have to prevent hydrops fetalis. So first of all, I mentioned that Rh negative pregnancy, ABO incompatibility, all this leads to alloimmunization. But why do we still keep on hearing about Rh negative pregnancy only and not about ABO incompatibility? How many times have you been, as an obstetrician for the residents who are listening to this, how many times have you seen ABO incompatibility leading to fetal anemia? First question. And secondly, we see many women with Rh negative pregnancies. Why doesn't this disorder, this erythroblastosis fetalis, or what we also call as the hemolytic disease of newborn? Hemorrhagic disease of newborn is basically when there is excessive bleeding tendency of the fetus, that is because of vitamin K deficiency, whereas hemolytic disease of newborn is because of this Rh negative incompatibility. So you would ask as to why doesn't this happen in all the Rh negative women? The first answer, the first reason is that in the first pregnancy, we all know that when for the first time that Rh positive antigen enters the mother, there is an immune response, and that immune response, IgM, is produced. Now, IgM is a large antibody, it's a huge immunoglobulin. It does not cross the placenta. ये placenta को cross करके fetus में नहीं जा पाता है. Which is why the first pregnancies are all saved from getting this alloimmunization. But unfortunately, in the second pregnancy, this would have become IgG and that will cross the placenta and go into the fetus. But for all the women who are coming to me as primigravidas, in them, this is one of the major reasons why it is not happening. Fetal anemia is not happening. Secondly, Rh antigen is an antigen which has very low antigenicity. Basically, इसमें इतना ताकत नहीं है antigen में to provoke an immune response. For example, in your body you get the adenovirus, rhinovirus, flu वाला virus एकदम weak अपने को लगता है, लेकिन जब अपने अंदर आता है within a day or two you are completely down with flu, you are getting all the clinical symptoms, your body is reacting to it, you are in a very poor state for the next couple of days. Similarly, or rather dissimilarly, Rh antigen does not have utna antigenicity. Its antigenicity is very low, which is why बहुत बार, even if it is crossing and coming into the mother, it doesn't always elicit that strong an immune response. The mother also plays part to this crime by ensuring that not all women mount a response. So not all women are mounting an adequate response. So basically, even the immunogenicity towards the Rh antigen is low. Lastly, if there is an ABO incompatibility as well alongside RH incompatibility, in that scenario, ABO is not like RH. It's a strong antigen. And that strong antigen elicits an immediate response. एक एकदम strong immediate response आता है. And hence, ABO incompatibility जब भी होता है, incompatibility, those RBCs are destroyed immediately. They're destroyed so quickly कि RH isoimmunization होने का टाइम ही नहीं मिलता है. Inadequate time for RH immunization. So all these reasons, and also one more factor, that even if there is a passage of RH antigens, the amount of RH antigens or the amount of fetal blood cells that go into the mother usually is not that high to mount an adequate response. So the low number of or the low quantity of RH antigens that are going, or the fetal RBCs that are going to the mother, is also one of the reasons. But these are the four major reasons why we do not see RH negative pregnancies go into fetal anemia that often. Even even women who are not registering themselves early on, who are not keeping a proper follow-up in the second or third pregnancies, उनमें भी isoimmunization इतना commonly क्यों नहीं दिखता है? These are all the causes. Now, a little about what RH, RH negative pregnancy is about. After this, we'll be starting about the case discussion. So RH negative pregnancy, सबसे पहली तो बात है RH antigen होता है, which is present in everyone. Which should be present in everyone. Few have it, few don't have it. So there are several more antigens. Though RH antigen is is the common umbrella term for it. There are several more antigens which come under it. Which are those several more antigens? बड़ा C और छोटा C, capital D, and छोटा E. These are the 5 antigens that are present or that come under RH antigen. उसमें से ये जो दो है, they have very low immunogenicity. Very low. This does not lead to any immune response. But D antigen is the one. There is no small d, by the way. This capital D has very high immunogenicity in comparison to the other four. How is this antigen formed? This antigen, or the gene that produces this antigen on the RBCs, known as the RHD gene, or if it is C and E, then we also call it RH C and E gene. So ये जो gene होता है, this is present on chromosome 1. So chromosome 1 पे इसका gene होता है which produces this antigen. Now a person can either be positive or negative, and when we talk of being positive, it is this D antigen that is present in that person, which is why we also call the vaccine or the immunization, the antibody that we give as anti-D. Now, similar to this, there is also one more antigen, just a passing discussion, not related to RH antigen, something called as a KEL antigen, KELL. ये जो KEL antigen है, ये बहुत dangerous होता है. Now, we all have studied about RH antigens earlier. We have read about how do we monitor titers and everything. Why are the titers important? Because more the titers, worse is the outcome. Now, in KEL antigen, monitoring titers is useless. Q. Because irrespective of the titer or the quantity of antibodies that are present in the mother, even the smallest of quantities can go into the fetus and they can destroy the RBCs. Not just that, they don't only destroy the RBCs, they also destroy the fetal precursor cells. जो erythroblastosis हो रहा था वो KEL antigen में वो भी नहीं होता है. There is no erythroblastosis that happens in KEL antigen because it even destroys the bone marrow में जो antigens होते हैं. इससे क्या होगा? इससे hemolysis होने के लिए there are no RBCs only, and we won't even see hemolysis. There is direct destruction of the erythroblast, the precursor. So there are no RBCs only to be destroyed. Hence, we would be never able to know कि कितना ज़्यादा hemolysis हुआ है. Which is why KEL antigen, if it is coming positive at any point, then you have to be very careful and you have to start monitoring this fetus immediately for fetal anemia, a very dangerous type of alloimmunization that can happen. That said, now let us just go ahead and discuss more about the case at hand, and that is RH negative pregnancy. So as we have followed the pattern in every case, first of all, we shall be discussing about the demographic factors, followed by the presenting complaints, the obstetric complaints, and then the examination or the obstetric history. So, first of all, what are the demographic details that you would be asking? So the first question is going to be, you would be asking about the demographic details, and those demographic details are not that important over here. यहाँ पे even consanguinity is not important. The marriage can be non-consanguineous and yet they both can have a negative and a positive antigen, and it can get isoimmunized. So consanguinity doesn't make a difference over here. The age, the occupation, the consanguinity, none of them make a difference. What makes a difference is the parity, of course. Why parity? Because more the parity, I mean gravida 3, gravida 4, the higher the chances that there might have been an event of isoimmunization in the previous pregnancy. So parity, very important. Along with parity, the knowing of history कि पहले isoimmunization हुई, in पहले anti-D मिला है या नहीं in previous pregnancy is very important. So demographic details में parity is very important, followed by the gestational age as well. Why? Because gestational age will let me know कि मुझे monitoring कब start करना है, when do I have to give routine antenatal anti-D prophylaxis, basically the anti-D injection, and when do I terminate and how do I monitor. So gestational age and parity, very important. Next, what might be the complaints or chief complaints? Again, सबसे पहले तो अपना 4 cardinal complaints that we have always spoken about: no pain in abdomen, no bleeding PV, no leaking PV, and no decreased fetal movements. Now इसमें से ये केस में कौन सा इंपॉर्टेंट है? इस केस में पेन इंपॉर्टेंट है, ब्लीडिंग पीवी इंपॉर्टेंट है, एंड लीकिंग और डिक्रीज फीटल मूवमेंट्स इंपॉर्टेंट है. लीकिंग इज नॉट दैट इंपॉर्टेंट. व्हाई पेन? Now pain जब भी होता है, whenever there is a bout of pain, that can lead to the passage of fetal RBCs into the maternal circulation. इसका क्या significance है? Now, there's a question that is often asked in your exams: would you give anti-D to a female who has just had an abortion? Very important question. First trimester है, anti-D देना है या नहीं? Very important. So now, how would you answer this? The easiest answer that you can give is yes, आपको देना है. The worst answer that you can give in your exam is नहीं देना है. But there is a better answer. Yes बोलना is a safe answer, but there is a better answer that you can give, and that answer is what I'm going to be telling you now. Now, what is the significance of pain? Pain is when the uterus is contracting, and uterus is contracting because of some possibly prostaglandins, खुद के जो अंदर के prostaglandins होते हैं उसकी वजह से. Now, whenever there is pain, whenever there is uterine contraction, there is pressing of the vessels, the spiral vessels, the fetal vessels. And this pressing can lead to pushing, literally pushing of the fetal RBCs into the maternal circulation. So whenever you are asked about abortions, the first thing that you have to be asking about is there were 2 features or not. Which are those 2 features? Was there bleeding as well alongside it? And was it excessive bleeding or just some bit of spotting? And whether there was pain or not. So whenever you're asked about abortions, ask for 2 things: whether there was pain and whether there was bleeding. The presence of excessive bleeding per vaginum, it can be in the form of inevitable abortion, incomplete abortion, or even threatened abortion for that matter, wherein the pregnancy still continues. Threatened abortion where the pregnancy can continue, whereas inevitable, incomplete, complete abortion, missed abortion, ये सब में pregnancy doesn't continue. In threatened abortion, it does continue. It can reach term as well. So you have to ask whether there was bleeding per vaginum and if it was excessive. And along with that, whether there was pain. If it was painless, bloodless abortion, then there was a very low risk of having received fetal RBCs from the fetus. So technically, there is no need to give any anti-D vaccination to women who have not had any pain and who have not had torrential bleeding. They just aborted and then done with it. Secondly, if they say that no, it was not a threatened abortion, it was an incomplete or inevitable or missed abortion, then you would ask whether there was any surgical evacuation that was done. What is surgical evacuation? Whether you did curettage or whether you did suction evacuation, whether there was any sort of surgical intervention that was undertaken in the operation theater. If they say that it was undertaken, then again it's a risk factor for the passage of fetal RBCs into the maternal blood. So by now we have 3 factors: pain, bleeding, and surgical evacuation. If any of these 3 factors are present, then that patient is a candidate for receiving anti-D in first trimester when it comes to abortions. Next question is about bleeding per vaginum. Bleeding per vaginum, I mentioned when it comes to abortions, kya scene hai. What about third trimester bleeding or second trimester bleeding? So for every episode of second and third trimester bleeding, remember that the risk of fetal-maternal hemorrhage, the bleeding may not be torrential. In the first trimester, only if it is torrential, then you give it. But in the second and third trimester, even if there is some spotting, then that can lead to the passage because the blood vessels have multiplied. They are larger in numbers, they are larger in size. So there is a higher risk of isoimmunization happening. So whenever there is a bleeding episode, yes, you have to give for each episode one injection of anti-D. You may ask कि पहला vaccination 4 हफ्ते पहले हुआ है फिर से देना है क्या? Yes, you have to give it. And that is apart from the routine antenatal anti-D that you give at 28 weeks. Irrespective of that, जब भी bleeding episode हो, you have to cover that episode with an anti-D injection. So bleeding PV, you have to ask if the female had any history of bleeding PV in her entire pregnancy, and if she did she receive an anti-D at that point of time? Next, decreased fetal movements. Decreased fetal movements can be because of two reasons over here. First is when there is fetal anemia, ongoing fetal anemia, and the baby is deteriorating, and the second one, the baby has already died. Probably the fetal anemia was way too much or for some other reason, but the fetus has died. So, fetal anemia and IUFD, two reasons wherein there can be decreased fetal movements. Basically, the baby's health is not good enough. So, these are the three important aspects that you should be asking for in the chief complaints, and never miss these points. Next, any specific complaints or any specific history. So, apart from that, I would like to ask in the specific history whether there has been any episode of trauma to the abdomen. That trauma can be some assault, someone has done that assault, or if she has fallen on her abdomen. Just a point regarding abortions. One more question that can be asked: do you give it for patients with MTP? Now, remember, whenever you do MTP, you give a drug called as misoprostol. Whenever you give misoprostol, remember misoprostol is a drug that will lead to contractions, that will lead to pain. Female को हो या ना हो, uterus contract होने वाला है. So definitely, whenever you're doing an MTP, and काफी बार MTP के बाद में बहुत सारे लोग Curetax तो करते ही है. So definitely, whenever you give any misoprostol to any patient, that female should receive anti-D. Next, you'll be asking whether the female has undergone any invasive procedure. Which is the invasive procedure that we are talking about over here? It can be the CVS or amniocentesis. Now, this leads to me to the question as to ये invasive procedure से क्यों होगा? So basically, पहली तो बात, whenever I'm introducing any needle or I'm doing any intervention and there is breakage of the integrity of fetal and maternal vessels, there is a risk of feto-maternal hemorrhage. So the next question is going to be, just like invasive procedures are a reason why feto-maternal hemorrhage happens, what are the other risk factors, or what are the other procedures, or what are the other events that can lead to feto-maternal hemorrhage and increase the risk of isoimmunization? So, right from in the first half of pregnancy, that is in the first weeks, I have abortions. I have induced abortions as well as that is MTP as well as spontaneous abortions. Along with that, I have ectopic pregnancy. I'll be coming to ectopic pregnancy after this. I have molar pregnancy. And I have CVS or amniocentesis in the first half of pregnancy, in the first 20 weeks, amniocentesis. In the second half of pregnancy, if there was any episode of antepartum hemorrhage, it can be because of placenta previa or abruption. If there was any abdominal trauma that had been incurred, then apart from that, if there was ECV, that is external cephalic version, that was basically I'm moving the fetus from breech presentation to cephalic presentation. Apart from that, peripartum or other postpartum is a better word. After delivery, देना ही, क्योंकि delivery का process itself is a big event of fetal-maternal hemorrhage, and if manual removal of placenta was done. Manual removal of placenta, whenever you're forcing the placenta out where the uterus is still not contracted. Usually क्या होता है, uterus contract होता है and the placenta separates. But if you're doing it manually, the uterus is not contracted. अभी contraction से क्या होता है, all the sinuses, the blood sinuses that lie open in that region of that placenta जहाँ पे attached था, now they are lying open and the uterus is not contracted. Those open sinuses can lead to fetal, or that can be a site for fetal-maternal hemorrhage, of the exchange of fetal RBCs into the maternal blood, which is why manual removal of placenta is a risk factor. I mentioned that I'll be talking about ectopic pregnancy and molar pregnancy. What about ectopic pregnancy? Now the literature is very dicey on it. It is inconclusive. They say that for all women who have had an ectopic pregnancy and have had a surgical intervention like salpingectomy, or who had ruptured ectopic already, or salpingostomy for that matter, all these candidates surgical procedure हुआ है, उनको anti-D दे दो. But what about the ones with medical management? Methotrexate जिनको दिया था हमने. Now, a few evidences say that fetal hemorrhage does indeed occur whenever we are giving medical management. A few literatures say that it doesn't happen, but everyone says that you should be giving the benefit of doubt to the female, and the cost and the risk that is incurred by not giving the NTD is much higher than the risk incurred by skipping than the risk incurred by giving the NTD. Basically, NTD देने से तो कोई तकलीफ नहीं है, थोड़ा खर्चा हो जाएगा, but in a civil hospital even that won't be there. It is just given for free in civil hospitals. But if you don't give it, and if there is a slightest risk of isoimmunization, then the female who probably has had a medical management of ectopic in her next pregnancy will have a higher risk of having isoimmunization, which is why you better give it. So the bottom line, give it to all ectopic pregnancies. Next, molar pregnancy, very important. Now the point with molar pregnancy is that we have complete mole and partial mole. Now when it comes to complete mole does not have any expression of the genotype. Basically इसमें कोई भी जीन जो था, पैटर्नल जीन जो था, उसका एक्सप्रेशन नहीं है. So basically there are no fetal RBCs that are present. So whenever there are no fetal RBCs, there is no risk of isoimmunization happening in that female who has complete mole. Whereas in partial mole, there are fetal parts, there are RBCs that are being expressed, and the RBCs are expressing the RH antigen. So there is a risk of isoimmunization in a partial mole. But how do you know whether it's a complete mole or a partial mole? अल्ट्रासाउंड पे जो अपने को दिखता है, वी माइट हैव मिस्ड वन स्मॉल पार्ट ऑफ पार्शियल मोल. एक छोटा सा फीटल पार्ट था, हमने देखा नहीं अल्ट्रासाउंड पे और हमने लिख दिया कि उसको कंप्लीट मोल है. It can so happen that it turns out that it was a partial mole later on, and I didn't give antidote to that female. So how do we definitely know whether there was partial or complete mole? There is only one way, and that one way is having a histopathological evaluation, a report, an examination report that I have in my hand. Only histopathological examination can reveal whether it was partial or whether it was complete mole. But when do you get those reports? In the best of setups, it takes 2 to 3 days at least. In a civil hospital, it can even take a month because there were a lot of pending backlog from all departments. So it can take up to a month or even two. Depends on how good your pathology department is. So when I say this, that it can take a lot of time to come, you will end up wasting a few crucial hours, a few crucial days for that female to get that anti-D vaccination. And unfortunately, she might get isoimmunized, and her next pregnancy is going to have isoimmunization in her. Which is why for all women with molar pregnancies, we do give anti-D because we are not sure until we get the report in our hands which type of molar pregnancy it was. And the effect of anti-D reduces after 3 days, after 72 hours, which is why you preferably give it on the first day itself for every female who has had molar pregnancy. So the bottom line is, abortions में जिसमें bleeding and pain हुआ है उनको देना है, हर ectopic में देना है, हर molar pregnancy में देना है. Done. That's it. Three special situations that we have discussed today for RH negative pregnancies. So coming back to the history, these were all the factors that can lead to fetal-maternal hemorrhage. Coming back to the history, I'll be asking her if there has been any event or any invasive procedure that was done earlier during her pregnancy. Apart from that, I'll be asking her in history itself if in her previous pregnancies she has received anti-D, very important. Has she received it after delivery? If she can remember, had she received it antenatally? Ask her about it. Apart from that, ask her if she has any signs of pre-monitor symptoms. Pre-monitor symptoms, pre-eclampsia क्यों? Imagine your fetus has fetal anemia. Fetal anemia है उसको compensate थोड़ा बहुत करने के लिए the placenta says I will increase my size so that even I can produce a few RBCs, I can do the function that the fetal body is not able to perform. This will lead to placentomegaly or hyperplacentosis. The placenta is increasing in size and function. Increase in the placental size and function is a risk factor for the development of preeclampsia, something that happens in patients with multiple pregnancy, or something that can even happen in patients with molar pregnancy, gestational trophoblastic disease, wherein there is a proliferation of trophoblasts. So placenta का जब भी size बढ़ता है, trophoblast जब भी बढ़ते हैं, there is an increased chance that this female might have preeclampsia. So ask her for pre-monitor symptoms, or if she already has preeclampsia, it might be an indirect factor or indirect sign that this baby has possibly fetal anemia due to Rh negative pregnancy. So ask her about all these symptoms without fail. Apart from that, ask her if she has had done any tests, any specific tests that she remembers, one of them being the ICT. Ask her, she might remember कि ICT ऐसा नाम का कोई टेस्ट किया था या नहीं, because it's a very specific test that you do only in Rh negative women. Apart from that, in her obstetric history, Again, I'll be asking her about her previous pregnancies. Previous pregnancies का anti-D मिला है या नहीं? I would also ask in the previous pregnancies what is the blood group of the previous children. जो घर पे बच्चे हैं उनका blood group क्या है? Apart from that, I will ask her if any of these children had neonatal jaundice after delivery. If they had jaundice, then possibly it might have been because of because of this Rh negative pregnancy. So I'll ask them for the file of it. I will ask them if she had any complications in her previous pregnancy, if it was a stillbirth, or if there was something like polyhydramnios that can happen in women with fetuses having fetal hydrops. So polyhydramnios जैसा कुछ था क्या? या anything that required NICU stay of the fetus. ये सब मुझे पूछना है पेशेंट को रिगार्डिंग हर प्रीवियस pregnancies. Apart from that, I will also ask her if she had received blood transfusions in her previous pregnancy. Apart from that, coming to the examination, nothing significant. There is not much that you can see. The only possible finding or the only positive finding that you may have in your female might be the polyhydramnios, the female having polyhydramnios, but that is something that occurs at a very later stage when there is full-blown hydrops that is present in the female. Fine. Now coming to the discussion. The first question that you will be asked is going to be, how do you manage a female who has come to you with Rh negative pregnancy? So first of all, I am going to be talking about the management side of it. So management में, whenever the female first comes to me in the first visit, the female can come to me before 12 weeks or she can come to me after 12 weeks. 12 weeks is our arbitrary point that we set, though we can do it even before that. We set it as an arbitrary point. So if she comes to me before 12 weeks, then I'll ask her that at 12 weeks, she has to do a test. Whereas if she has not come till 12 weeks, she has come to me after that. So at any point after 12 weeks, I'll ask her to do a test called as indirect Coombs test. Now a little bit about indirect Coombs test. There are two Coombs tests that we do for detecting anemia or for detecting hemolytic anemia. It can be done in adults, it can be done in babies as well. So there are two types, there is indirect and there is direct. ये indirect और direct में क्या difference है? Very simple. In the indirect one, just remember, by the way, we do indirect in a pregnant female just for the sake of remembering, and we do direct in a neonate after it is born. So क्या करते हैं हम, ये pregnant female का जो serum है, serum is basically devoid of RBCs, completely no cells. उसमें serum में रहेगा सिर्फ antibodies. So मैटरनल सीरम में लेता हूं और इसके साथ मैं मिक्स करता हूं आरबीसीज विथ एंटीजन, RH एंटीजन. ये मैं मिक्स करूंगा बाहर से. Now if there is immediate agglutination, I will know that this maternal serum had antibodies actually. It did contain antibodies, because if there were no antibodies, there wouldn't have been any agglutination. But if there is agglutination that is happening, then I would know that there have been antibodies that are present. So if agglutination is positive, then what I will do is, I will see the titers. Basically, I will do dilution. और डाइल्यूशन करके मैं डिटरमाइन करूंगा कि कितना टाइटर है या कितना स्ट्रॉन्ग है, कितना क्वांटिटी है एंटीबॉडीज का. टाइटर इज नथिंग बट बेसिकली क्वांटिफिकेशन ऑफ द टोटल नंबर ऑफ एंटीबॉडीज. सो ये जो टाइटर है, इट डिफर्स फ्रॉम लैब टू लैब. एवरी लैब का अलग अलग क्रिटिकल टाइटर होता है. क्रिटिकल टाइटर इज बेसिकली द टाइटर जिसके ऊपर जाएंगे तो देयर इज गोइंग टू बी अनीमिया दैट इज हैपनिंग. सिग्निफिकेंट अमाउंट ऑफ एंटीबॉडीज व्हेनेवर दे आर प्रेजेंट, वी कॉल इट क्रिटिकल टाइटर. द क्रिटिकल टाइटर डिफर्स फॉर एवरी डिजीज एंड इट ऑल्सो डिफर्स. जैसे तुम लोग टाइफॉइड में देखे रहेंगे 1:160 को हम सिग्निफिकेंट मानते हैं, 1:160, 326, 40 को सिग्निफिकेंट मानते हैं, 1:80 तक कुछ नहीं मानते. वैसे हमारे लिए फॉर एवरी लैब इट इज डिफरेंट, but mostly the labs take it to be 1:8 or 1:60. If a lab is not mentioning on the report क्या है, then we arbitrarily consider it to be 1:16. So 1:16 is the critical titer. So this is an important value that we have to remember unless the lab was already specified कि हमारा critical titer 1:8 है. So now what about 1:16? So now your titers can be either less than 1:16 or more than 1:16. Taking a pause from this discussion because यहाँ पे मुझे फिर से बात करनी है. मैं यही फीमेल का यही टेस्ट करूंगा, that is ICT. I'll again continue the part that I've left off. Before doing the ICT, because there's a long follow-up वहाँ पे, the first thing that I do at the first visit is going to be maternal blood group, and once I know it is negative, then I go for the ICT. Once the maternal blood group is known to be Rh negative, I will then go ahead and check the husband's blood group and then check if it is Rh negative or Rh positive. If it is Rh negative, the mother is already negative. If the father is also negative, then nothing to be done. No follow-up required for this Rh antigen wali baat, because mother and father both are negative, the fetus is going to be negative and there is not going to be any fetal anemia. But the problem begins if the husband turns out to be Rh positive. Now, a few places might ask you, what is heterogeneity or what is homogeneity of Rh antigen? The heterogeneity and the homogeneity of Rh antigen is basically the father can be either a heterogeneously positive or he can be homogeneously positive. होमोजीनसली पॉजिटिव मतलब उसके दोनों जो जीन्स है वो कैपिटल डी वाले हैं, whereas heterogeneous is कैपिटल डी एंड छोटा डी. मदर में ऑब्वियसली बिकॉज शी इज नेगेटिव, इट इज गोइंग टू बी छोटा डी एंड छोटा डी ओनली. So now if the father is homogeneously positive, then there is a 100% chance that the fetus is going to be positive only. Fetus will be positive. Whereas if it is heterogeneous, then there is only a 50% chance that the fetus will be Rh positive. This is only a theoretical aspect. इसके हम कैसे पता करेंगे फादर का क्या है? ब्लड ग्रुपिंग में नहीं पता चलता है. We have to do genotyping for Rh. Very expensive test. The test of this, cost of this test is going to exceed the cost of the vaccine anti-D. तो ये कोई करता नहीं है. This is just a theoretical discussion that you need to know. कि फादर का ब्लड ग्रुप हेट्रोजीनस रहेगा कि होमोजीनस रहेगा, and how do we know? Obviously अगर heterogeneous आता है, इसका क्या significance है? Then it will say that only the 50% of the babies are positive. So in that scenario, what I will do is I will do cell-free DNA testing of the fetus or of the mother, basically जिसमें fetal cells रहेंगे, or I can even do amniocentesis, which we don't usually do, and then we'll determine the fetal blood group, and only if it is positive, then we'll give the mother anti-D. So basically ये एक तरीका है खाना ऐसा ऊपर से खाने का, सामने से नहीं खाने का, उल्टा सब करने का. Unnecessary, just a very theoretical discussion that you need to know. Fine. Coming to this ICT, मैंने वो विजिट में ICT कर लिया. ICT मैंने जैसे बोला, इट कैन बी 1:16 के नीचे और 1:16 के ऊपर. Now this is if the ICT has come to be positive. If it has come to be negative, then I don't need to worry at all. अगर negative आता है तो मैं directly at 28 weeks testing करूंगा. Whereas अगर positive आता है and if the titers are less than 1:16, then after 4 weeks, every 4 weeks, I'll be checking the ICT titers again. फिर से titers देखूंगा, 1:16 के नीचे है देखूंगा या 1:16 के ऊपर है देखूंगा, and बाद में मैं फिर से decide करूंगा if it is less than 1:16, then again 4 weekly, and if it is more than 1:16, then जो मैं ऊपर अभी करने वाला है वो करूंगा. Once it crosses 1:16, at that point of time, I should know that the critical titer has crossed, and now I need to remember that there is a high risk that the fetus might have fetal anemia. So I need to now do fetal testing as well. So for that, we do fetal MCA Doppler. Now, what is fetal MCA Doppler? Fetal MCA is basically the fetal middle cerebral artery. It's an artery in the fetal brain. एंड उसमें हम लोग चेक करते हैं कि बेबी के ब्लड का विस्कोसिटी कितना है बाय चेकिंग द फीटल एमसीए पीएसवी। सो एमसीए पीएसवी हम देखते हैं। PSV is peak systolic velocity. Now the thing is, whenever there is fetal anemia, the RBCs are being broken down. So the number of the amount of RBC is broken down whenever it breaks down. Whenever you're imagine it to be like Fevicol and water. Your Fevicol has a lot of solutes in it. जिसकी वजह से it is very viscous. Whereas water has no solutes in it. It is very less viscous. It flows very easily. Similarly, if your blood is having hemolysis, the viscosity is going to go down. Whereas if your blood is not having any hemolysis, there are a lot of RBCs that are present and your blood is going to be viscous. More the viscosity, lesser the velocity. Water flows faster than Fevicol on a surface. Similarly, if there is hemolysis, there is reduction in the viscosity, then the velocity is going to increase. Hence, an increase in velocity or peak systolic velocity in the fetal middle cerebral artery is an indicator of significant fetal anemia. Then we use a calculator that will calculate and put it into multiples of median. I can either have it in 1.5 MOM, that is multiples of median, or it can be more than 1.5 multiples of median. अगर less than 1.5 आता है, then I will do 2 weekly MCA PSV. I'll call her back after 2 weeks and I'll keep on doing it. And every time I do it, I will check for 1.5 है या more than 1.5 है. The moment it crosses 1.5 is a point where I know that significant fetal anemia has started to occur and I just can't be relying now on ultrasound or maternal testing. I need to do an invasive testing. This invasive testing is basically अब मैं बेबी का ही डायरेक्टली ब्लड टेस्ट करूंगा सीवीसी करने के लिए. हाउ डू आई डू इट? आई डू कॉर्डोसेंटेसिस. कॉर्डोसेंटेसिस इज टेकिंग ब्लड फ्रॉम द फीटल अम्बिलिकल कॉर्ड. सो फीटल अम्बिलिकल कॉर्ड से मैं ब्लड लूंगा और उसका मैं हिमेटोक्रिट चेक करूंगा बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली व्हेनेवर देयर इज फीटल अनीमिया ड्यू टू hemolysis the hematocrit is going to go down. Now the normal hematocrit for a normal healthy adult is between 40 to 45%. For females it is 35 to 40, for men it is 40 to 45, but average is 40. For a neonate though, or for a fetus it is around 60%. It is much more concentrated, so 60% होता है. So कॉर्डोसेंटेसिस पे if the hematocrit is less than 30, बेसिक पहले मैं डालूंगा if it is more than 30% and it is less than 30%. If it is more than 30%, then I will not do anything. I will just call her back after 1 week for doing her MCA PSV. Whereas if it is, sorry, this is for more than. So basically, if it is more than 30%, then I would know that I don't need to worry about it right now. The hematocrit is still slightly okay. I don't need to worry much. I'll call her every week for fetal MCA PSV. But if it has gone down below 30%, then there is significant fetal anemia. Less than 30% is somewhat indicative of the fetal hemoglobin being around 8 to 9%. If it goes below 10%, then it is indicative of fetal hydrops. 10% by hydrop शुरू होता है. Now this is an indication for either termination or intrauterine transfusion. Now termination कब करेंगे हम? If it has crossed 34 weeks. Whereas intrauterine transfusion is done for less than 34 weeks. To whom do we give intrauterine transfusion? The fetuses who have hematocrit less than 30%. How do we give? Which is the kind of blood that we give? We give them O negative, CMV negative with packed cell volume or hematocrit more than 80%. So basically एकदम packed blood है, उसमें serum कम, RBC से ज़्यादा है. We give them this concentrated blood so that we do not need to repeatedly keep on giving these babies बार-बार intrauterine transfusions and leukocyte depleted. This is the quality of blood that we give to these babies. How do we give it and how do we calculate the formula? I'll be telling this to you at a later point. अभी बता देता हूँ. The formula is first of all I need to know कि fetal weight कितना है on the ultrasound. सो इफेक्टिव फीटल वेट एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम को मैं मल्टीप्लाई करूंगा 0.02 के एक फैक्टर से। मुझे जो भी वैल्यू आएगा उसको मैं x का नाम देके रखूंगा। Now remember that after doing an intrauterine transfusion, I cannot achieve the normal hematocrit of 60%. My target is always going to be 40 to 40 to 50%. This is going to be my target. तो ना यहाँ पे ये फॉर्मूला में फॉर कैलकुलेटिंग कि कितना ब्लड देना है, कितना ml टू बी ट्रांसफ्यूज्ड। तो अब ये जो मुझे 40 जो मेरा टारगेट है उसमें से आई विल सब्ट्रैक्ट द करंट हिमेटोक्रिट। सो अज्यूमिंग मेरा करंट हिमेटोक्रिट 20 है, so now I get the value to be 20. In multiples of 10, 20 is twice of 10. So now I have 2 यहाँ पे as a factor. मैं ये दोनों को combine करूंगा, which is 2 into x. इसमें से जितना भी ml आएगा, that is the ml of blood that I have to be giving to the fetus. Target I have to reach 40. 40 कितना देना है वो इससे मुझे पता चलेगा, इतना वैल्यू मुझे आ जाएगा, and that is how I give it. You would ask me, मुझे देना है ब्लड तो कैसे देना है? Umbilical cord has 3 vessels, A, B and A. Umbilical artery 2 है, which go from the fetus to the mother. Umbilical vein एक है जो mother से fetus में जाता है. So obviously the chordocentesis or the testing is done from umbilical artery. Chordocentesis basically baby का जब मैंने hematocrit check किया, I've done it from this artery. Whereas umbilical vein जिसमें mother से fetus में blood जा रहा है, उसमें मैं करूंगा इंट्रायूट्राइन ट्रांसफ्यूजन। While doing it, the baby might move. So for me to prevent the movement, I can also give it a muscle relaxant called as vecuronium. I can inject it in the deltoid or in the um, quadriceps. I can be injecting it so that the baby doesn't move. Once I'm done with all this, once I'm done with the intrauterine transfusion, I'll be calling the baby after again 1 week, and then I'll be doing again MCA PSV to check the progress. Now I'll be resetting this MCA PSV at a little higher level so that I don't need to बार-बार re-transfuse the baby. अभी मेरा 1.7 level हो गया. It can be either below 1.7 or more than 1.7. If it is more than 1.7, I need to repeat the intrauterine transfusion till 34 weeks, and then deliver it. If it is less than 1.7, मतलब उतना भी खराब नहीं हुआ अब तक, the RBCs are still not broken down, then after again 1 week, I'll be calling her back for MCA PSV. So this is basically broadly the management and the way we manage patients with RH negative pregnancy. A bit of a very intense management discussion, but I hope this flowchart, which is very logical, you would be able to know कि कैसे और कब follow up रखना है. Now there was one point that we didn't discuss. This point was, what if ये सबका जरूरत ही ना पड़े? Whenever this ICT comes to be negative directly. अगर ICT negative आता है, then I'll be calling her back at 28 weeks and I'll be repeating the ICT again. If it is again negative, then I give her RAADP. RAADP is basically routine antenatal anti-D prophylaxis. So अगर negative आता है बार बार, then she is a candidate for anti-D injection. 28 weeks पे देना है. A bit of discussion on anti-D as well यहाँ पे. Anti-D, how does it work? The mechanism of action. सच तो यही है कि किसी को भी नहीं पता वो कैसे काम करता है. There are two ways though that have been stated as possibly उससे काम हो सकता है. They are saying that the first use is it covers the fetal RBCs के ऊपर का एंटीजन, RH एंटीजन. So basically ये जो एंटीडी होता है, it goes and covers it in the maternal blood so that it does not elicit an immune response. The other way it acts is it destroys maternal antibodies. This is said to be the major reason and this to be the second major reason, but we still don't know clearly which is the bigger reason in the way it acts. The half-life of it is around approximately, अगर मैं बात करूंगा इसके half-life की, so it is around 20 days. So अगर 20 days है, how do we know the total amount of time that it is going to be in my body? So for that we do either 4 or 5 into t half, a basic pharmacological formula that we have all known, which comes out to be between 80 to 100 days. 80 to 100 days is roughly between 12 to 14 weeks. So basically the NTD action lasts in your body for somewhere around 12 to 14 weeks. 28 वीक्स पे तुमने रूटीन एंटीनेटल एंटीडी प्रोफाइलैक्सिस लिया, 12 टू 14 वीक्स मतलब इट इज कैरिंग यू टिल योर टर्म एट लीस्ट। टर्म तक तो तुम्हारा प्रेगनेंसी जा रहा है। दिस ऑल्सो आंसर्स द क्वेश्चन कि डिस्पाइट हैविंग रिसीव्ड एंटीनेटल या 28 वीक्स एंटीडी इंजेक्शन, why do we still need to give it postnatal? Because if your baby is being delivered after or around 40 weeks, which is most likely the case, then the effect of that antenatal anti-D is almost depleted, which is why you need to give it again, because at the time of delivery, maximum amount of anti-D or the maximum amount of fetal RBCs pass into the mother's circulation. The other question is, for 28 weeks ही क्यों? We can even give it at 14 weeks, 28 weeks and 40 weeks. 28 पे क्यों देना है? The answer is the amount of isoimmunization that happens below 28 weeks is too low. The quantity of blood that causes isoimmunization is very low before 28 weeks. It increases almost 10 to 50 times in the third trimester, which begins at around 28 वीक्स। तो थर्ड ट्राइमेस्टर में मैक्सिमम चांसेस है फीटोमेटल न्यूमरेज का, उससे ज्यादा सिर्फ डिलीवरी के टाइम होते हैं। सो टू कवर दैट इंपॉर्टेंट एरिया ऑफ इंट्रापार्टम एंड थर्ड ट्राइमेस्टर, वी गिव इट एट 28 वीक्स एंड ऑब्वियसली देन वी रिपीट इट आफ्टर डिलीवरी। द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज गोइंग टू बी, हाउ डू वी नो कि हम जो एंटीडी दे रहे हैं वो एडिक्वेट है, यानी व्हाट इज द डोज? तो डोज की बात अगर करें तो टिल 12 वीक्स, और अगर टिल 12 टू 20 वीक्स ही बोलूं तो ठीक है, 12 टू 20 वीक्स ही बोल देता हूँ। द डोज दैट वी गिव इज 50 माइक्रोग्राम और 250 international units. This is the dose that you give, whereas in a 28 weeks पे जो देते हो रूटीन एंटीनेटल एंटी प्रोफाइलैक्सिस और जो पोस्टपार्टम देते हो, इट इज गोइंग टू बी 300 माइक्रोग्राम और 1500 international units. How do you know whether the amount of NTD that you have given is adequate or not? So to calculate whether it is adequate or not, there is a very simple formula that you would be using, or a simple test that you would be doing. We don't practically do it because it is a little cumbersome, but nevertheless, it's a bedside test. The test का name is Kleehor-Betke test. Now Kleehor-Betke test का एक ही simple उसूल है, हम मैटरनल ब्लड लेते हैं and its maternal blood में we add some acid. Now this acid will act on the maternal RBCs जो मदर में already है and fetal RBCs if they have entered the mother's blood. Now maternal RBC के अंदर होता है HbA, whereas fetal में होता है HbF, fetal hemoglobin. This is very sensitive to acid. HbA is very sensitive to acid and it is completely destroyed. The cells are also completely destroyed. Now, whenever these cells are destroyed, or what we can also call as lysed, all that is left behind is the cytoskeleton, which we also call as the ghost cells. Whereas fetal hemoglobin does not undergo lysis, it just undergoes denaturation. This denaturation helps the fetal RBCs persist and it is brightly stained due to this acid. So basically mother के body में या mother के blood में whenever we add acid, the mother cells are destroyed whereas the fetal cells remain. Now we take this slide and we study it under the microscope. Now this is one of the pictures. Over here you can see that these cells which are brightly staining and these cells you can see over here, these are the ghost cells. These are the maternal RBCs. Whereas these are the fetal RBCs. This is a picture that has been taken from Williams. Now once I am done with this, now I have to calculate कि यहाँ पे कितने cells है and I have to calculate कि totally कितने cells है of fetal RBCs in comparison to the maternal RBCs. Now in this picture, I know I have calculated that the total number of fetal cells in comparison to the mother cells is 1.7%. So now how do I calculate the feto-maternal hemorrhage? A very simple formula. First of all, I'll be taking maternal blood volume. Maternal blood volume which is somewhere between 5 to 6 liters. मैं यहाँ पे 5000 assume कर लेता हूँ. उसके लिए भी formulas इंटरनेट पे आते हैं. Multiplied by the maternal hematocrit. Maternal hematocrit which is going to be during pregnancy because of hemodilution somewhere between 30% to 35% के बीच में. Into the percentage of fetal RBCs. In this picture, I already know that it is 1.7%. It can be more, it can be less. This is to be divided by the newborn or neonate का hematocrit. That hematocrit, which is going to be somewhere between 40 to 50 to 60. So I'll take it as 50. So after making this formula, I get that the feto-maternal hemorrhage for this female जिसका हमने peripheral smear किया था, was 60 ml. Now, one 300 microgram dose of anti-D covers 30 ml of fetal blood or 15 ml of fetal RBCs. यहाँ पे you can see that the fetal blood that is entered is 60 ml, which is double of 30 ml, which is why this female needs to be given a dose that is twice of 300 microgram, which is why the ideal dose for this female is going to be 600 microgram. This is how we decide, and this is how we know how much of feto-maternal hemorrhage has happened and how much of anti-D has to be given to adequately cover that feto-maternal hemorrhage. What is the total dose that I can give in a day? One more question that you can ask. अगर intramuscularly दे रहे हो, so you can give 5 doses in 24 hours. Maximum 5 doses over 24 hours is 5 into 300. 300 का एक dose आता है, which is somewhere 1500 microgram या फिर 7500 international units. अगर intravenously दे रहे हो, why would you give it intravenously if your patient has severe thrombocytopenia, if the patient has coagulation disorder जिससे मसल में hematoma बन सकता है, तो उनमें you will be giving it intravascularly, and the maximum doses that you can be giving in a single day is going to be 2 into 300 in one go every 8 hourly. So this is almost equal to thrice a day. TDS हो जाएगा because 8 hourly दे रहा हूँ. So 900 microgram, or if I'm multiplying it by 5, 4500 international units maximum I can be giving in a day. So this is the max daily dose. I cannot be exceeding this dose beyond this dose. There's one more question that I love asking the students in the exams. What is the alternative use of anti-D apart from this RHF isoimmunization? The answer to that is I can even use it as a substitute for IVIG, which is given to patients with ITP. IVIG बहुत सारी यूज जैसे Guillain-Barré syndrome, or emergency basis पे if I don't have hepatitis B immunoglobulin that I give for passive vaccination for people with pinpricks from HBsAg positive needles. इनमें भी I can be giving anti-D. It works as fine as well as that. Fine. Now that we have spoken about all this, a few more factors, a few more questions that you might be asked about. The questions are going to be, I'm just looking up कि क्या क्या पूछ सकते हैं एग्जाम में. Yeah, one more thing that you can be asked about is what are the maternal complications. We have already discussed placentosis, hyperplacentosis की वजह से polyhydramnios हो सकता है, preeclampsia हो सकता है, बेसिकली मदर को डिफिकल्टी हो सकती है ब्रीदिंग एंड ये सब में बिकॉज ऑफ पॉलीहाइड्रामियोस. सेकेंडली अगले प्रेगनेंसी में द बेबी विल अगेन बी अफेक्टेड. सो यस, सब्सिक्वेंट प्रेगनेंसी में देयर कैन बी रिकरेंट प्रेगनेंसी लॉस इन थर्ड ट्राइमेस्टर. दैट कैन हैपन. फीटस में वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड देयर कैन बी फीटल एनीमिया, हाइड्रॉप्स फीटालिस. Plus, if the baby has received antibodies and after delivery, the body has a lot of hemolysis. पेट में था तब तक the placenta was taking care of the excessive bilirubin that is produced from hemolysis. But after it is born, there is no placenta and the fetal liver is already overwhelmed. It is very small. That can lead to hyperbilirubinemia. Hyperbilirubinemia, if it crosses the level of 15 to 20, especially 20, then it can go and enter into the brain and settle into the basal ganglia. Basal ganglia में जाएगा तभी कर्निक टेरस होगा बेबी को. So post delivery कर्निक टेरस and neonatal hyperbilirubinemia that starts from day one. Pathological neonatal jaundice का one of the causes is RH isoimmunization. So before fetal anemia ये सब हो सकता है. Fetal anemia and then hydrops is the worst possible thing that can happen. वन मोर थिंग दैट यू कैन बी आस्क्ड कि ये एमसीए पीएसवी तो अभी आया है पिछले 10-20 साल में. व्हाट वाज देयर टू मेजर द फीटल एनीमिया बिफोर दैट? देयर वाज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज लिली स्टार्ट. लिली LILEY लिली स्टार्ट. नाउ व्हाट डिड लिली स्टार्ट डू? लिली स्टार्ट पे हम लोग क्या करते थे? हम लोग पहले एमनियोसेंटेसिस करते थे. वी यूज्ड टू विथड्रॉ द amniotic fluid, and that amniotic fluid used to be predisposed to a light that had the wavelength of 450 nanometer. 450 nanometer से the optical density was 450 nanometer. We would see कि कितना deviation आ रहा है optical density में from that amniotic fluid. The more the deviation, the more is the hemoglobin, the more is the bilirubin that is present inside that amniotic fluid. The more the bilirubin, the worse is the fetal anemia. Why did we abandon this? First of all, it required an invasive testing. Amniocentesis बार बार करना पड़ रहा था जिससे खुद fetal hemorrhage होता है. So we had to abandon it. Secondly, this could only be done after 27 weeks because till 27 weeks, that is basically in the first 2 trimesters, the reliability of this test wasn't that good. There was Quervin नाम का एक था बंदा जिसने ये किया. उसको फर्स्ट वीक से भी स्टार्ट करने के लिए उसने किया, एक नया फॉर्मूला बनाया, but it was still not effective. And how do you manage? Then there were 3 zones that were being made: Zone 1, Zone 2 and Zone 3. Zone 3 was the one जहाँ पे proper fetal hemorrhage हो रहा है, fetal anemia भी हो रहा है, and it requires intrauterine transfusion. Whereas 2 वो था जिसमें चल जाता था, कुछ इतना नहीं है, बस monitoring करना है बार बार. So that is how the release zones were supposed to be. There was a chart on which you had to chart all this. Apart from that, one more question that you might be asked is, what are the different precautions do you take when do you terminate these pregnancies? Now, a female who is having no isoimmunization, she is ICT negative, and she has been given routine antenatal anti-D prophylaxis. She has to be delivered at 40 weeks of gestation by usual induction of labor, या फिर LSCS if obstetrical indicated. If there is isoimmunization and if the titers are below 1:16, then you will be delivering it at 37 to 38 weeks. Whereas if it crosses 1:16, then you will be doing it at 34 weeks of gestation. So 34, 37, and 40, depending on what is the report of your ICT. One more question. Do we repeat the ICT after 28 weeks after we have given her anti-D? No, you don't repeat it because now that you have given her anti-D, her ICT is going to come positive. So ICT up to 1:4 is going to be positive utne titer tak after you have given anti-D. Once you have given the anti-D, 1:4 तक positive आ रहा है, but if the titers are more than that, 1:16, 1:32, then you have to think कि वो anti-D की वजह से नहीं है, वो isoimmunization की वजह से, and my anti-D का dose has fallen short, adequate नहीं था वो, या फिर वो पहले से ही isoimmunized थी. So 1:4 तक normally भी positive आएगा after giving anti-D, but उससे अगर ज़्यादा आ रहा है, then you need to know that there is a risk that this baby is now going to have, or it is already having, isoimmunization that has occurred. What are the precautions that you take during delivery? Not many. First of all, manual removal of placenta is to be avoided. Active management of first stage of labor करो, but manually मत निकालो. Cord traction देके निकाल सकते हो. Avoid giving methergine because methergine causes tetanic contraction of the uterus that can lead to pushing of the fetal RBCs into the maternal blood. And delayed cord clamping definitely can be followed if there is no isoimmunization. Apart from that, nothing differently that has to be given after delivery. You do baby's blood group. अगर baby's blood group negative आता है तो mother को नहीं देना है. अगर baby's blood group positive आता है और उसमें DCT positive आता है, बहुत सारे लोग नहीं देते हैं, गलत है. You have to give anti-D even if the baby's DCT is positive, because even if the DCT is positive, इसका ये मतलब है कि baby में antibodies है, but the mother has received new RBCs during delivery, new fetal RBCs. नेक्स्ट प्रेगनेंसी में वही आरबीसीज उसको तकलीफ देंगे. दिस इज व्हाई यू हैव टू गिव इट टू एवरी फीमेल जिसका बेबी आरएच पॉजिटिव है, irrespective of the DCT status. Do not withhold the anti-D only because the DCT has come out to be positive. One more question. If tubal ligation has been done for that female, sterilization has been done, do you still give anti-D? The answer is yes. Q, 5 years later, what if one of her children dies, or if she has a divorce, she remarries someone else and now she needs kids, and then she does tubal recanalization. So अगर tubal recanalization कर रहे हो पिछली बार अगर नहीं दिया है एंटी डी, then she can be isoimmunized. So to prevent that scenario for even tubal ligation females, you will be giving anti-D. Anything else that you need to know? Nothing. Fetal anemia and has been discussed. Neonatal hyperbilirubinemia is something that can be studied in pediatrics as well. So from my end, this is it about the lecture. So that is it from me from this session on Rh negative pregnancies. I hope this has covered all the practical points that you can be asked about in the exams. So all the best everyone, and I shall see you in next session of case discussion reviews. This is Dr. Aditya signing off.